Well, as you know, this region has undergone a tremendous transformation in the last 30 years. I mean, when I came to this county, 43% of all people that had jobs worked in manufacturing. Today it's 16%. So there's been a huge transition that's taken place. So a lot of folks that had jobs here now find themselves having to retrain, reskill, upskill, change their fields altogether in order to be able to get employment. People love to live in Northeast Ohio. They don't want to have to move out of the area, but they want to be gainfully employed and be able to enjoy the quality of life. So there's a huge retraining and upskilling need. The other reason is that as we transform the economy, what we find is that most of the new fields and opportunities require higher levels of skills. So even folks that had skills that were effective in the earlier economy now find themselves having to upgrade their skills in order to be able to manage new technologies and new opportunities. There are a lot of things that we do, and you know, one of the critical concepts is that we work very hard to try to stay connected to what are the changes in the economy. So we do a lot of research with employers and with different entities across the region to understand what are the changes that are taking place. And then we try to put programs in place that respond to those. One of the things we do is what we call customized education and training, where we go into companies and work with them around what their strategic vision is and what their plans and what their needs are, and then we try to tailor a workforce to them. Poly1 is a provider of customized plastic materials, and they're a worldwide company, very successful, and they have locations all across the United States and across the world. Well, they're evolving into new markets, and so they have a whole new leadership challenge. And so they've put together a program that we've helped them design called an Emerging Leaders Program, where we help them develop the leadership competencies within their staff to be able to take that company where it wants to go in its strategic vision. And so we not only do training for them here in Avon Lake, but we also help them with their plants in Georgia, Texas, and other parts of the country. So that's one example. Now they're focused on leadership development. Others are focused on more technical skills. For instance, we've just finished a very large product for General Motors to try to upgrade the skill level training for the people that do material joining and welding kinds of applications. As you know, robotic welding is kind of the coin of the realm today in metal joining, and so we've just done a major project for them. So you work with the company specifically and in depth to understand what they're trying to accomplish, and then you design the programs to respond to that. Well, one example that I'll give you is that quite often, if you look at the data, it indicates that there are anywhere between 3,000 and 7,000 information technology jobs that are unfilled at any one time. And so one of the things we've done is work across the region to create a board of employers. We call it the Regional Information Technology Engagement Board. And we have representatives from Eaton Corporation, Highland Software, a variety of kinds of companies. And we work with them to identify what are their emerging needs and what are their critically unmet needs, and then try to work with the educational institutions to refine our programs to respond to those needs. Now, there's always a challenge, because one of the things you know is that educational programs take time. So getting the right workers with the right skills at the right time at the right price is a huge challenge for many of these companies. But information technology is a wonderful example. There are good jobs that require preparation and skill development way beyond high school, many of them at the associate, the bachelor's, and even the graduate level across our region. But you got to work with the companies to be clear on where the jobs are, get the right skills, and then get people connected to the companies sometimes there's a disconnect between what a company thinks they need and how they communicate that need to people who would conceivably be their employees. We try to provide opportunities for people who perhaps are dislocated, that have been in an industry where there are no longer jobs, or they have lost their job for one reason or another. As you know, coming out of this recession, we have a very large number of people who've been unemployed for a year or more. And so we put programs in place. For instance, we created a program called Make Your Layoff Payoff. If you're going to be laid off, get into an educational program where you can retool for another field. And so we've been able to help people that have lost employment in manufacturing get prepared to go into healthcare, for instance, where there are still solid jobs and great opportunities. So we do that kind of thing to be open to the general public. And then, of course, we have all of the college degree programs that focus on preparation for various fields. We have a variety. At this college, we have about 102 or 3 different associate degree and certificate programs available to meet lots of industry needs. One of the challenges is to be able to help people who need jobs understand what the fields are that have good jobs, and then understand what it takes to get prepared. And so one of the things we do is we work with the workforce system, the one-stop centers, where people go to get connected if they're unemployed, to get connected to new employment. We work with those centers to try to help them understand what are the changing needs of the workforce here, and then what are the preparation programs that can put them in place. It's a very difficult challenge because one of the things that happens is some people get unemployed and they get unemployment compensation. And so they don't think necessarily about getting retrained until they start getting to the end of those benefits, because they think they may still get a job. So by the time they're getting to the end of the benefits and realize they still are unemployed and they need to get retraining, then they don't have time enough to get it. So it's a real challenge to get it to happen effectively, but we're making some good progress in working with the workforce system to get more people engaged. One of the other things that's critically helpful in this arena is to get employers to be clear about where the job opportunities are. I'll give you an example. We've had one of the major utility companies come to us and say, we realize, given the age of our workforce, that we are about to have a major turnover here. And so we need to prepare for 2 years down the road, having people with these skills and abilities. Would you help us put a program together? When we're able to communicate to potential employees where the jobs are and who has them, it's amazing how people get connected. We had more people come out for that program than they had slots. They ended up having to select people by lotteries. Okay, so the employers have a major role in sending the message that there are good jobs in my field. So that's part of what we're trying to do. Certainly the government programs are critical because there are many institutions, particularly in state government, but also in local, that have requirements around education and training. Okay, there's a higher education system, the K-12 system, our adult career centers all provide education and training. And so having those systems work effectively is a critical component to addressing the workforce needs. And that means you've got to have coordination among and between the various parts of the system so that people can understand how to navigate the system. One of the challenges often is how do I know where to go to get started? Or how do I know who has the program that I need to get? So being able to coordinate and to communicate effectively the programs that government has available is a major challenge. But government has a major responsibility in education around workforce development, along obviously with the companies. Now philanthropy, fortunately in Northeast Ohio we have the Fund for Our Economic Future. And the fund has been very focused on using philanthropic dollars to try to nurture various components of the economic transformation process. And they are focusing on workforce development. One of the things they're currently working at is trying to figure out a way to plant some seeds of innovation in the workforce development systems, in education and training. And so that's a very promising. That's something you can use philanthropic dollars for that you probably couldn't use government dollars for, and so on. So it's a good partnership between philanthropy and education at many of those levels. Economics at many of those. 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 At something we couldn't use for well as you. 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 Economic. 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 Economic.